Today we're going to be doing some bearing press work on a Mac 1010 piston. Either one's pressed into these bosses on both sides. What I've used is an arbor press, a nut or a socket to hold the piston up off of the ground while you're pressing, so you don't put pressure on this side of the piston. A smaller socket or even this bolt and nut to press the actual bearings out. It's a little bit tricky how you have to do it, especially if your bolt and your nut, they have to be larger than the bearing to put good pressure on the bearing, but also small enough to where you can fit this nut in between to press them out in stages. We're going to get started pressing the bearings back in to the new piston. So this new piston actually looks great. It's slightly smaller on the exhaust and the intake faces than the original piston. This is a Mac 1010. This original piston shows like significant wear and scoring. Not sure why. It might have been because the previous owner ran straight gas through it or it overheated, but it definitely melted. And then there are some like pitting marks from when I was pressing the old bearings out. I wasn't trying to be too careful with this one since I wasn't obviously going to reuse it. I did mark the exhaust and intake side because the intake side is slightly larger than the exhaust side, so it needs to be, the new piston needs to be oriented in the same direction so it properly seal. So I marked the exhaust side on my rod and my bottom of the piston itself. Alright, so this is how we're going to set up our press. I'm going to press these bearings in one at a time. There's markings on these bearings and I'm going to have the markings on the outside. That's how it was on the original piston. So what I'm going to do though is I'm going to support the piston on that boss, and then I'm also going to put the rod in to support the middle section while we actually do the pressing. So we'll have the socket, and then we're actually going to press it with another socket too. So I'm using a 9mm socket to press this in. The way that this is the actual pin that's pressed in as well, and this is press fit into this rod, and this pin doesn't spin. It rides on the needles in both of these bearings on both sides of this piston. Start pressing here. Make sure it's nice and centered. It's oriented correctly. So we'll set this up correctly first. Then I'll add my rod in after, just to give it support. So that one actually pressed in really easily. Kinda scary how easily that pressed in, but this is the exact same piston. The inside diameter of both of those holes measured the same as the original piston. So should be good. We'll set this one up. To be honest, might not even, it pressed in so easily I might not even need to use the rod at this moment. Alright. So both of those are pressed in on either side. Now I have to press this pin in. What I'll do is I'll offset the piston itself a little bit more from the socket using this nut, because the nut itself will kind of capture that bearing so it doesn't get pressed out, although it shouldn't, but just in case, we'll set it up that way. And then to actually press the pin in, I'm going to be using 7/32, which is the exact same size as the pin. I'm just gingerly pressing this in just to make sure everything's going in smoothly, and it appears that it is. Here we go. Alright, so we're almost all the way pressed through. Feels good too. Not really any play. So the pin itself is almost pressed all the way down, and you kind of want it to be equidistant inside. So you want the pin centered, and you want to see just as much of the bearings show on both sides, just so you can kind of get an idea, or just so you can kind of landmark centered. Just a little bit at a time. That actually looks pretty good right there. So it's about actually could go maybe a little bit more, but that's damn near there. So the piston itself, able to ride up and down inside the cylinder. No issues. So the only thing I have to do, only thing I'm waiting for this is a ball hone so I can get the scoring or get the glazing off the cylinder walls. And there's a tiny bit of scoring inside the cylinder wall, but I don't think it's going to affect it much. Alright, that's about it.